Let us not jump around too much. But these are my thoughts on corruption in Parliament. I already told you that Mao is an answer to a different question. And that question is, who can best lead Parliament in tackling the problems of Uganda, including fighting corruption? I agree that the greatest vulnerability of the Parliament today is not only the appearance of corruption, but the reality of it. Therefore, if we are to consolidate the institutional power of the Parliament, we have to not only focus on the problems in the delivery of services, enforcing laws, and representing the public interest, but also to fight corruption. There are many reasons why corruption has to be fought. Since our biggest challenge is underdevelopment, we have to tackle impediments to development. Corruption is the biggest impediment to development. Corruption impedes economic development in a number of ways. When officials with political power demand bribes, resources go into private pockets instead of being channeled towards production. This becomes a great distortion of economic incentives. Corruption is also a kind of regressive tax upon the population. All countries have petty corruption. You know, the type which is carried out by poorly paid officials. But the largest amount of stolen money goes into the pockets of elites who use their power to divert resources meant for the general population. Public officials who seek payoffs in the form of bribes in order to do their work waste a lot of time and delay projects. Wealth creators spend valuable time chasing officials to make decisions instead of focusing on running their businesses. At the same time, officials spend most of their time in a kind of gamesmanship to seek private gain at public expense. This is what economists call rent seeking. We reject the belief that bribery fosters efficiency by acting as a lubricant to incentivize officials to act quickly in processes such as land transactions, registration of businesses, securing licenses, and getting appointments with high-level officials. We reject this school of thought and believe that procedures should be simple and straightforward. Red tape should be eliminated, and every individual should have equal access to government. Corruption can also undermine political order, because where there is a general perception that officials and politicians are corrupt, the legitimacy of the government declines in the eyes of the common people, and the sense of trust that is critical if the state is to run will collapse. To borrow the word of President Trump, I am here to drain the swamp. We must stop the hemorrhage of public resources. That is the key task of the next Speaker of Parliament. So, I propose a diagnostic endeavor to carry out a forensic audit of Parliament, the finances, assets, streamlining workforce issues such as recruitment, remuneration, promotion, capacity building. That is why today I celebrate our brave and public-spirited effort to stop individual power from overtaking institutional power in Parliament. Electing the right speaker for the right time is only the beginning of the work that we have. We have to restore integrity. That is why my candidacy is not simply a political challenge to the parliamentary status quo. It's a moral challenge. As the president said in Chakwanzi, the final verdict is with the members of the third parliament. Anybody else can only recommend. We need humility. If the president of Uganda can say, we have made our recommendation, then what is the point of having an election? But more importantly, power must be driven by purpose. The office of Speaker is very powerful. It gives you an opportunity to do good things, but it can also give you an opportunity to do bad things, as we have seen. Power without purpose will lead to a disaster. And that purpose must be based on the interests of the people of Uganda. We want a speaker who will lead with purpose. We don't want a speaker who is a project. That is why we must insist that power must be our servant and not our master. I'm seeking this position for the purpose. Over the weeks, I've stated my record, I've stated my journey. I've outlined the charge of the position, and I've consistently declared the purpose for which I seek the position. Yesterday, the chairman of the NRM Electoral Commission made a public statement where he said, as of now, the NRM does not have a candidate for speaker. He said it. The symbols we saw on ballot papers are well known. The chairman of the Electoral Commission made a statement and posted a video on X. And today, I saw the General Secretary of the PLU saying he agrees with that statement. I hope after this press conference, there will be less confusion. And I really ask the members of 12th Parliament, stop the confusion. You are all over the place, swinging in all sorts of directions. Even your followers now don't know what to do. The person who made the pronouncement in Mukono has said he now agrees with what the chairman of the NRM Electoral Commission has said. And this is a summary of what the chairman of the Electoral Commission said. First, he talked about the qualification of a speaker. He said, to be a speaker, you must be able to withstand pressure, and you must have the mettle to be the speaker. Who has demonstrated that more than me in this period? And he said that the stepping down from being a candidate by the former speaker has, and I quote, set the ground for a new process. As a cooperating partner of the NRM, I have read and mastered the NRM Constitution. I've read their code of conduct, and I pay attention to what their leaders say. After all, if you are seated in a vehicle which someone else is driving, you have got to watch how they are driving. He said that the choice is now on the party to do the roadmap. He then said, the chairman will guide us on the roadmap. But he also mentioned the relationship between the NRM and the PLU. He called the PLU a pressure group. And he said, as a pressure group, they are autonomous and they are free to make their pronouncements and endorsements. I agree with that. I have no problem with that. But what I know is that they are within the NRM. He also said the Central Executive Committee can also do headhunting. So, he has clarified on that statement, the Mukono pronouncement. What we want to avoid is improvisation. Someone who has not actively shown interest, being interested, and therefore appearing to be a project. That reminds me of a president called Godfrey Binaisa. You know, Godfrey Binaisa was lobbying to be, I don't know whether an ambassador. Then they told him, you are going to be president. You can imagine the disaster which followed. He started doing things. He's the one who introduced that famous phrase, Okugwa movie into. Falling into things. Now, the politics of falling into things should not be encouraged, particularly for a position such as that of Speaker. And we are going to be alive, all of us. I don't know how things will move after this. My job is to warn. But I'm also a respected elder within the PLU, as you know. So let me offer some advice. And this is not the first time I've offered advice. The first advice I gave one time was when some of them wanted to register a political party. And I told them that we also face that dilemma as members of Uganda Young Democrats, UID. There was a time we were so frustrated with our party. It appeared stuck, they were bickering, they were slow. We wanted to form a party. Fortunately, we eventually debated and we agreed that no. What we should endeavor to do is to ensure that one of us takes over the leadership of the party. That's why I'm here. It is the UID which propelled me. So, I agree that the PLU will determine the next generation of leaders of NRM, from the top to all the levels. That's okay. That requires discipline. The other example is the Tea Party in the Republican Party of America. They became a force, and they're the ones who revolutionized the Congress and the Senate, and they even were the force behind Donald Trump. Now, in a situation where any survey, any of you in the media, you have seen all surveys that have been done online, offline. Even if you go to the border stage now and you ask, who do you want to be the speaker? They will say, Mao. I have seen the debate which has followed the Mukono pronouncement. It is mixed. So, we have got to avoid the politics of falling into things. So what is my expectation? My expectations are very modest. My expectation is not that I should be imposed on the parliament as speaker. Not to say tumulese. It should be aze tumuzimye. You first have to come, then you are appreciated. You cannot be brought. I expect that, like I was invited in Chankwanzi, I will be invited to the NRM caucus in the spirit of unity, which we all agree on. And we talk objectively about the agenda of the 12th Parliament, and we agree. I've been called a visitor in NRM. As a visitor, you must recognize boundaries. And the head of the home can change the rules anytime. The head of the home can say lunch will be eaten at 10 a.m. Supper will be eaten at midnight. As a visitor, really, you have very little to say about that. The visitor can say all lights must be switched off by 8 a.m. and the visitor has to comply. That one I accept. So, what I believe is that there should be clear processes. But if one is locked out, then you feel that you have not been treated well. I'm glad the president intervened and I was not locked out of Chankwan. I believe I'll not be locked out of facing the caucus, which is the caucus of the voters. Let the caucus be the ones to pronounce themselves and say, in our considered opinion, for the following reasons, this is the person we will rally behind. I still believe I have an opportunity and a chance to be the speaker. You know how I think. One day somebody told me, are you sure you can be speaker? What chance do you have? Then I said, by the way, if I'm on the top floor of a very tall building and the building catches fire, and I'm told that I have a 1% chance to survive if I jump, I'll jump immediately. I've not heard anybody saying Mao has no chance. There are those who had said the former speaker was too big to fall. But that's the same false evidence appearing here. That's not David's logic. The logic of the generals who ran away from Goliath was that the guy is too big, there's no way we can beat him. David, with his sling, turned that logic upside down and said, the guy is so big I can't even miss him. That's the logic with which I approach this fight. Others are saying, too big, how can we manage? I say, oh, too big, how can I miss? Even with a Butida. Let me now speak about the opposition finally. Life is very ironic. The opposition should thank me. You were supposed to be walloped. You heard it. They said that in the last parliament you were swallowed. That in this parliament you are going to be walloped. You should thank me for disarming those who wanted to wallop. Because walloping means a thorough beating. Has any of you gone to the dictionary to see the meaning of walloping? It's a thorough beating. A kind of beating like in football when you are beaten 8-0. That is really being walloped. Now, this is my thinking on the opposition. And that is why the NRM should not think they are risking anything. The first question is Mao a patriot? That question should go to the Patriotic League of Uganda. Because even among them, they have unpatriotic people. Because you don't just become a patriot by wearing a league. That I have seen some of the most immoral people wearing the biggest rosaries. They're even the first in the line for Holy Communion. So let other people talk about you. That's why I say, is Mao a patriot? When I was risking my life to go and talk to Kony, was I doing it for myself and my family? I wanted Uganda to be peaceful. When I was campaigning so that President Museveni's votes are a block where I come from, was I doing it for myself? It's because I don't only preach unity, I practice it.